From now until Monday morning, Code Espresso is 30% off as opposed to the normal 10%, so head over to gfuel.com and check out any starter pack, new tubs, or shakers if you're interested, and be sure to use Code Espresso at checkout. Link in the description below. At this point, it seems like we're right on the cusp of another update for Modern Warfare, a continuation of what we've seen in terms of updates, bug fixes, patches, and potentially maybe even new content on top of that. The relative frequency of these updates for Modern Warfare, and of course then the recent talks and discussion from various developers and team members from Infinity Ward over on Twitter, brings this topic knocking once again. So today I want to keep you guys in the loop for 14 changes coming that we know of as of the next update. Naturally, when this update drops, and according to Infinity Ward's team, it's going to be a larger one, an update with over 2 pages of notes associated with it. That means that there will likely be more coming, perhaps more than we discuss here in this video, but for reference, we're going to discuss everything that we know of so far. So that said, if I missed anything, do be sure to let me know in the comments down below, and anything you guys would like to see changed also. And as well, if you're new, maybe considering the subscribe button if you guys haven't done so already, to stay up to date with all things Modern Warfare and all things Call of Duty on a daily basis. That said, let's talk about these changes. Firstly, let's talk about these changes that will be made that are still persisting after the last update, whether that be the last title update or the last hotfix that came earlier this week. The first of these being the persisting loadout on spawn bug in Ground War. For those of you guys that haven't seen this, we talked about it in a video earlier this week, but it's something that whenever you go and spawn in Ground War, it'll sometimes try and prompt you to select a loadout, even though you already had one, you're just trying to spawn back in, and then it becomes this endless feedback loop almost, where it just doesn't do anything. It was definitely way more prominent a couple of days ago than it is now, but I have still seen some issues reported over on Twitter, on Reddit, elsewhere, in which it seemingly does still have that rare one that does slip between the cracks, but that should be fixed out as the next update. Then another big one that's been ongoing for quite some time is that of some challenge fixes in various locations, that dealing also with the officer challenges, but also camo challenges. I know that a lot of people are actually pretty close to Damascus camo, the max camo, for getting gold on every single weapon, and they're just 1 or 2 small steps away because some of the camo challenges are bugged. Now, forgive my ignorance, off the top of my head, I can't exactly remember which ones they are and what weapons they apply to, but that's something that, of course, with a grind so big as Damascus, it's frustrating that that stuff persists, that there isn't fixes made here for this, but apparently, based off of Twitter replies from the developing team, those are looking to be ironed out within this next update. As for the officer challenges, again, this is another thing that is a huge grind, but to my knowledge, challenges like the doing work challenge are bugged to which you can't complete your 100% of all your officer challenges. We've talked about what I think is the significance of the officer challenges. Others don't really see too much significance in it, and again, that's to each their own. You don't have to do them, but if you are a completionist and you want to get potentially that max prestige icon, if you will, next season, if that's what it ends up pertaining to, of course, this one challenge may be the only thing standing between you and that completion, so you want to get it done. That should have a fix incoming shortly with this update too. But let's talk about some newer adjustments here coming with this next update. One of the big ones that's been on deck for a while now and has been mentioned by Joe Seacott himself is that of a nerf to the tanks. This is still in contention, and if it's going to be coming in the timetable that seems present whenever discussed by developers, I would imagine it comes as of tomorrow. Now, in terms of what exactly this may entail, your guess is truly as good as mine. I've already laid out my thoughts on how you can nerf a tank by either reducing the amount of rockets it takes to end up destroying one. You can easily put a fire rate cap on the tank. You could end up decreasing the amount of rockets it has. You could even put a simple cap on how many rockets in total it ends up having. You could change the spawn rates of them so there's not as many in the field of play. There's plenty of scenarios that work out in which you still uphold a freaking tank being a tank, but not something that is a free handout and cheesy and can be abused as much as it is on, say, the hillside of Karst River Quarry. Again, the details are not known as of right now, but I would expect that to be coming with this title update as well. Then we end up having the discussion of further weapon tuning, in which again the details of this are still way too fuzzy. We saw a bunch of stuff done to the 725. We saw a slight buff to the AUG, which amendment to the video we talked about, in that they changed the update notes actually after we made that video to clarify that it was for the 5.56 rounds on the AUG only. But there's going to be another round of tuning passes here for weaponry that you can expect as well, with the full notes being, of course, what details all of that in total. Then also mentioned is fixes to perks. What this means, your guess is as good as mine. The only thing that I can think of off the top of my head is that of EOD and the hacking mechanism, where it takes so long and even does have some issues where after you put in that time to hack it, the consistency is kind of up in the air where it doesn't hack sometimes, so you have to sit and do it again, in which that case, it's about 20 seconds that you're just immobile and just kind of sitting there, and an enemy could definitely walk up on you and kill you. So that kind of stuff has been mentioned for an EOD fix, but outside of that, for other perk adjustments, I'm not entirely sure what that could allude to. Then, though, we end up seeing that there's going to be probably further spawn logic. This was mentioned in a conversation with David Michter in the clip you'll see on screen right now. The spawn logic on some maps in particular is certainly interesting. It's been an ongoing process. They've been working on this since launch. It's not something with any spawn logic update where you're going to have one night it's just terrible and then the next morning it's going to be fixed and perfect. That stuff just realistically doesn't happen like that. It's an evolution of and a progressive push towards better systems, but the stuff like what you're seeing on screen should be fixed out in that specific instance. And one that I'm really hoping for is that on Krovnik Farmland, there's some further spawn logic adjustments as well. And even say on Karst River Quarry, I find that in Krovnik and then also on Karst, whenever I choose to spawn on a flag, it always, for whatever reason, throws me in the middle of the street where there's often 6-7 people overlooking that street, all ADS and ready to take me out. So that stuff I'm hoping gets fixed out as well, but some specifics have been mentioned as coming as well. Then we'll end up seeing some CDL fixes mentioned by Ashton Williams, this including the option to disable the spawn camera in private match. Additionally mentioned in the same breath as these CDL fixes, we'll also end up seeing that thermals will now be able to see through smoke, and then also the S&D mounting glitch will be something that's fixed out as well. Admittedly, I don't play too much S&D to know exactly what the S&D mounting glitch entails and how deep it goes, but I've heard from numerous people across social media that it's definitely something, and especially in the competitive community, that is absolutely terrorizing the game right now and makes S&D almost unplayable. So that's something that, of course, is going to be nice to see those fixes coming. Then we'll also see the kill feed being adjusted, as mentioned by David Michter earlier in the week as well. This removing things like the player promoted text lines, the avenged you, the saved you, the you saved, and the like. And then as well, collaterals will have classic icons for those kills they end up getting. The penetration icon, which is brand new to the game as well, will only showcase on single kills, not collaterals. So if it's on a player and a player is killed behind them, it's just going to be a regular thing. This helps the feeding community out a little bit and doesn't take away from any of that, but the single through walls and other surfaces will then afterwards have that penetration icon in the kill feed. Another big one that I am super excited to see ironed out once again, this was mentioned that it was fixed, but it still persisted from the last update, is that of the kill streak cycle bug. Now, again, I think that I know the methodology here to this, but without promoting it because it's absolute BS. It is something in which this bug persisted where you could get your streaks, you could end up doing the methodology, and then on your next life, you could call in your streaks, and those streak kills would count towards your next streak. So essentially, you had kill chain, but on steroids. So essentially, if you wanted to say get an AC-130 or a gunship, you could get a gunship every single time that you ended up getting a gunship. It would just lead up to next, and so therefore, you probably saw these artificial gameplays of players getting 100+ kills in ground war, maybe even upwards of higher, but that's something that was, in some rare cases, maybe legit, but for the most part, a lot of them were abusing this kill streak cycle bug. So that should be fixed out with this next update and finally ironed out with that. Then we'll see some adjustments with the counter UAV. There's two in particular here that I want to mention. Firstly, one's a smaller one, that being a smaller movement bug, and which is a smaller issue but restricts movement until the player is completely out of the tablet, whereas you'd think you'd still be able to walk around a little bit even whenever you're done placing that. You're not in the interact feature of the tablet. It just is that extra second or two in which you can't move. That's something that's been mentioned as relayed and I would expect to be fixed out in the next update. And then the final thing here in terms of the counter UAV stuff and regular technical fixes and changes you can expect is that of the perpetual counter UAV bug, in which in some cases I've experienced this a ton of times on ground war, where players would try and go and shoot out the counter UAV and get their minimap back, but it would just stay there. It was literally an invincible counter UAV. So you were counter UAV'd the entire game. Naturally, that shouldn't happen. Naturally, that messes with the flow. And so therefore, this, I think, should also be fixed out if they're already working on the counter UAV. Now, the final change that I would really be curious to see if this does happen, especially if the update comes tomorrow, is that of just how much we may stay in line with what we've seen so far. Now, when we talk about this, we're going to talk about potentially new maps coming or new content of some sort. Now, I don't think this is going to be Season 1, but maybe still just a drop beforehand, because we talked about a couple of weeks ago the fact that there were 38-ish maps found in the game files of the base build of the game. So meaning that we'll see more even added onto that in the future, but for the time being, we had 38 maps available to potentially be DLC maps. And when we did the math and broke that down, it was roughly about 1 or 2 maps every single 2 weeks. And well, what was 2 weeks ago? Well, that was whenever we saw Kravnik Farmland and Shoot House introduced. 2 weeks before that, the launch of the game. So technically we're right on pace for what may be another DLC drop tomorrow in terms of maybe new maps, if that's something that happens. And so therefore, I'd be curious to see if this does happen as a change here for this update. So while this is probably the least confirmed of all of the changes that we've talked about here with this, there's nothing that publicly hints at this coming. It is interesting that we may end up seeing this. And so therefore, that's where we're going to wrap it up. And that's going to conclude the 14 things that may be coming here with this update and the changes that you can expect to see within the next title update. Again, I think that this may be coming as of tomorrow. Everything that we've seen so far from the indications in terms of developers talking about later this week, and what Ashton Williams recently talked about, the update notes being almost completed and that they'll have them whenever they're ready. And that kind of hints to me that we're right on the cusp of another title update for Modern Warfare. So that's that's where we're gonna wrap it up. Again, let me know your thoughts down there in the comment section down below. Is there anything in particular that you guys really liked here out of this? Anything in particular you're hoping to see added on top of this in terms of changes? Whatever it is, feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. That said, hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to drop a like down below, and of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Modern Warfare, updates, news, information, tips, tricks, all that good stuff. We got you covered here on the channel. So if any of that interests you, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single thing. If you guys also want to follow me over on Twitter and Instagram, there's the best places to get connected outside of YouTube. Probably live on both those. If you guys want to strike up a conversation, ask me a question, whatever it may be, that link is down there in the description below. That said, thanks so much for watching. My name is Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care and peace.